Each season, summer, fall, and winter, spring, the Loft schedules a huge variety of writing classes. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce one of our teaching artists who instructs children and adults, Lisa Bolt Simmons. Lisa, could you introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved with the Loft?
I actually started taking classes back in, oh my gosh, I think it was back in 2007, 2006, a long time ago. And I felt the ambiance of the Loft just really helped me as a writer. It wasn't just the classes, but it was the energy of the classes. It was the vibe of the classes. And I actually started publishing books based on a class that I took there. Laura Purdue Salas was teaching a class on writing for educational purposes. And so I took her class and I managed to get in with my first book about the Minnesota Wild, crazy enough, but I was a hockey mom at the time. So it worked out really well. And now I have 60 books out there. And so I always credit the Loft for that opportunity to take a class. And then as I kept kind of moving along, I thought, I would really like to teach. I'm a teacher anyway. I was a teacher for 25 years. And I thought, I'd really like to teach because I love to teach. And then I love to share with others that joy of writing. So that's that. I just love the Loft. And it's been hard. I mean, I understand why we can't be at the Loft, but it's hard to not have that exposed brick and to be able to go up that staircase. And so hopefully one of these days we'll be able to get back there. So it's quite the wonderful place.
I agree. It's a wonderful place to work. Beautiful space. And it takes
Beautiful space. Yeah, beautiful space.
I'd like to go back really quick just to a terminology you use talking about writing for educational purposes. Just to expound a little bit on what you mean by that.
Well, I was a teacher for 25 years, and the last position that I had here in southern Minnesota, a lot of our population didn't have a lot of money. I mean, it's blue collar, and I always felt my kids were lucky, my twins, because we could take them to Barnes and Noble every once in a while, and we could get them some books. But a lot of our population couldn't just do that. They just couldn't go to a bookstore and buy books. And I thought, how could I as a teacher get books into school libraries so kids could access those books? And so I thought, well, I could combine my education, being the teacher, and then also my love of nonfiction. And also I love to do research. Now, some people, I have friends who despise all of that. They hate research, they hate writing, they hate all of that, which is where I step in because I love to do all of those things. I love learning new things. I love putting that information into books for children. And so most of my books are in school libraries. And I love that kids who walk in, not have to pay anything, check out those books, learn new information, and then return them for the next student. So,
well, you mentioned, the research aspect, but also I was hoping you could talk to us a little bit more about what the process of writing nonfiction children's books entails.
Most of my books right now are work for hire. I am working on a picture book that is my own. It's kind of funny. The current book that I'm working on that was work for hire, I was doing research and I discovered this person. So it's a biography. And I'm like, okay, I need to write about this person. And so that's my own, I call it like my own work, my heart work or whatever. But I am given those assignments. My editor writes to me and say, hey, how would you like to write about ancient Greece? Now, ancient Greece isn't necessarily what I want to write about, but when you have to pay your bills, you say, sure, I would love to write about ancient Greece. Or my dad was in the military. And so because they found out about that, I've written a lot of military books. And actually this one that I'm working on now is about World War II. And So they say, do you want to write about these books? And I say, yes, I do. And it's fascinating, actually, when they say, this is the book that we'd like for you to write. They tell you how it needs to be formatted. So whether it's 5 chapters or 3 chapters, if you need a timeline at the back, that kind of thing. And then I just start doing research and I put it together. And then usually sometimes it's an outline. Then they say, okay, your outline looks okay. Why don't you write the first draft? And then the editor gives feedback. And we just kind of work together as a team and get those books written. So yeah, it's pretty, actually all of those up here, that top shelf are mine. So I need to move them to a different place because I can't reach up there.
Yeah.
So and sometimes I need to go grab one for some reason. So but it's been fascinating. You know, a lot of times when I do school visits, kids are like, well, which one is your favorite book? And I can't tell you, because every single time I do research on something, I find it's just fascinating, the information that I find out. So
Well, you did a really lovely job explaining what work for hire entails, and just, expounding on that a little bit. An editor just comes up with pretty much exactly what they want written, and then they reach out to an author. And
correct.
So I work as a literary agent. That's one of my jobs.
Yes.
And sometimes a literary agent facilitates work for hire. So I do that for some of my clients. But one of the nice things is you don't have to have an agent. So I was hoping to also talk about how writing specifically nonfiction children's books is a good way to break into publishing before being an agent.
Absolutely. And that's actually been so wonderful because, like I said, I have 60 books right now. 55 of them are the nonfiction children's books. And I don't have an agent for any of those. They're work for hire. And I have worked with 7 publishers. I have one main publisher, Capstone, which is out of Mankato. But the rest are, one of them was Redline Editorials. So I was able to get in with like 3 or 4 publishers that way. But work for hire was an excellent way for me to get in and work with an editor. And that was huge. You have to be able to work with an editor for any sort of publishing, is what I try to teach in my classes as well. It really is a team effort. And I know that self-publishing is something that my students ask me about. And there's a project that's come up that I may try to dig into the self-publishing just to kind of see what that's like and to get more information about that. But so far, this has been a great way for me to come in. I haven't had to worry about an agent. As long as I do a good job, the editors come back and they ask me, I stick with the deadlines, and then they can ask me back and say, well, do you want to do this and this? And sometimes it's, say if there's a book of 4, sometimes I've worked on one book out of the 4, but sometimes I've worked on all 4. And so that's been really interesting as well. Whether I'm just working on the entire set, which is a very time consuming, but it's also kind of nice too, because then the voice is the same and the editor doesn't have to worry about having to say, well, this author needs to change this voice and this voice and this voice, and they have to get everybody on the same page. So I think it's probably easier to pick, one author for the entire set. So, but yeah, it's been great. I've been really, really thankful to get into that. But that said, I have a lot of my own work that I'd really like to get out. And so hopefully I can do that as well. But this has been a great way for me to get into publishing. Again, anytime I work with an editor, it's just great practice for working with a team. So.
And those first couple of work for hire projects, how did you get connected with the editor you eventually worked for?
Well, I took the Lori Perdisalis, and what's interesting with that is that she had the catalogs, because back then, 2007, it wasn't all on, the web. So she actually had the hardcover copies of the catalogs. And you just go through and you're like, well, what's missing? And again, I was a hockey mom at the time. And so I'm going through, and so I wrote the publisher, and or the editor, and I said, how would you guys like to you have football and you have baseball, but you don't have hockey. I'd love to write the hockey set for you. And I got an email back and they said, we already have the hockey set. Thanks, but we're done, thanks, but no thanks. Like a month later, they wrote back and said, oh, we didn't write a wild book, Minnesota wild book, and someone wants to buy the book. Are you still interested? I'm like, absolutely. So that was a really quick, right time, right place. Okay. To get into Capstone, because I got my MFA in Mankato, I was sending my resume to them. And I hate saying this, but I sent my resume to them for 7 years. So talk about persistence. Yeah. So I'm stubborn and I was persistent. And then I finally got in with them and they gave me a super easy, it was a kindergarten, first grade book. And I got in with them. So I think that authors, potential authors, writers just need to look around and see what's out there, because these publishers need writers. They need writers for these books for children. So
obviously your experience, you've written a ton of books for children, right? But you were also a teacher for 25 years. And I'm wondering how your experience in the classroom informs how you teach, both for adults and for children.
It really goes hand in hand, because I like to do a lot of the visuals, besides the fact that I'm a visual person. So I like to show a lot of examples. And also it's really less about me talking. It's really a lot of the students in the class sharing their ideas and sharing what they have found. So if they say, hey, I found this book and this was a really great book, and then I add it to my resource list that I share with all the students. And we do a lot of workshopping, because a whole bunch of other voices and not just mine is really important. That's what I've always done as a teacher as well. So it really goes hand in hand.
And you mentioned before that you love to research, and one of the classes you teach is specifically about research. So what do you say to those potential students who are like, I'm really interested in this, but I hate research? How do you change their minds?
To be honest, I don't think I've ever gotten anybody in that class who doesn't like research. So I don't know how I changed their mind, except that obviously I'm animated. My family gives me a hard time because I'm always using my hands, but I get so excited about just researching and finding out new things. It's really about finding out new information. I have learned so much about our world. And so that's probably how I would change their mind, is that I'm like, you have no idea what's out there until you start finding and researching and digging. And, it's those rabbit holes, those, that cliche, the rabbit holes or whatever. And it is fascinating, the things that we start finding out about this world that we're living in. So, but I haven't gotten anybody who comes in, because we always go around and introduce ourselves. And I say, why are you taking this class? And people say it. And then I said, and I hope that you like researching. And no one has ever said that they hate researching. So I don't know. Now watch me get one. Now you just jinxed me.
Yeah. You'll have to make a plan for when you find a student.
Yeah, I'll let you know in August.
Well, speaking of your students too, so regardless of what your class is focusing on, a lot of your classes focus on research and writing for nonfiction, but outside of, sort of the takeaways that we might expect from that, what is it that you hope your students gain from your classes?
For the research and writing, I just want it to be very practical. I want them to be able to get done with those 2 sessions and to be able to go, we do the work sample and we do the query letter. And I want them to be able to go out and be able to know how to approach the publishers and say, this is what I can do for you. And we talk about how to research, how to approach interviews, things like that. So I feel anytime I teach, going back to that teaching question too, I want everything that I tell them to be practical. I want them to be able to go out and say, I am ready to offer this, no matter what you want me to do. And then I also teach a children's literature class, and that's a 6-week class coming up. The thing that I wanted to do with that, because I've also written middle grade novels, and I'm working on a young adult novel right now. I always feel like even with fiction, we still sometimes have to research. So, like learning how to fly, like I need to learn how to fly in order to write my new young adult novel. So there's always research in terms of how can you dig a little bit more to make your work more authentic. And with the children's literature class as well, it's also, if you're not quite sure if you want to write a picture book and you want to try to play around with that kind of level, because it is tough to write a picture book. You really have to pick those right words, and it's tough. And then you get that middle grade level. And then there's students who maybe want to try that young adult level. And that's why I wanted to do it for all of those levels. And we try and we get examples. And I taught that in the spring. And it was really awesome that all of these students could kind of feel that they could come to my class and be in a safe space and a comfortable space, and they could try these different genres out, or not genres, but levels. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, I just have one final question, and it's a little bit more personal about you. So obviously you write a lot. You're a mom, you're a dog mom.
Yeah.
But when you do have free time, what is it that you like to do?
Oh, well, we just moved. And so I now have hostas that I got to take care of. And of course, I love to read, but I am also a scrapbooker. And I do some digital books, but I like the old fashioned, cut. And I made scrapbooks for my kids, for my twins, for their school graduation parties. And I just really like to scrapbook a lot. And now we live in the country. I walk my dogs. So yeah, and I love to travel. So so I just need to start making a little bit more money so I could do a little bit more. But I did do my first school visit in Cambodia. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun. That was a really fascinating trip. We just did that in March.
Wow,
So
it's incredible.
yeah. So if I can just keep doing things like that, I lived in Japan, and I lived in Mexico City, and I lived in Italy, and those kind of experiences are life-changing. So, and I did do research. One of the young adult novels that I have finished, and I'm getting in the process of trying to finish that out to send out. I was able to go to Kenya and to Ethiopia, and that was an absolutely, it was just wonderful. I can't even begin to express how life-changing that was. So,
well, maybe one of these days we'll get some like satellite loft offices where you can see them.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh, I would love that.
That would be amazing. Yeah, maybe they could send some of their staff out to work there. No.
Yeah, right. I know. I'll be first.
Well, thank you again so much, Lisa, for being here today. For our viewers, you can find all of Lisa's classes as well as our full lineup by visiting loft.org/classes. And Lisa, as always, your classes sound fantastic, and I know students are going to love them.
Yeah, thank you very much.